Hopefully it's okay. I realize people at the back may not be able to see me when I sit down, but I'm not supposed to stand for too long just yet, so I hope you will indulge me. My pleasure to be here today. When Stephen asked me to give the talk, I didn't know I was going to have the surgery, and then when I found out it was happening, it became a goal to be here to do this physically afterwards. So I'm very pleased that I was able to reach that goal. I'm going to share with you a little bit of background around cull cows in Canada, but more focused in Ontario, including recent work done by Joanne Marshall, which some of you would have gotten surveys potentially to participate in that project, and then focusing on the feeding study that Stephen just alluded to, who was part of Nicole Verdusco's master's project. So, as you are well aware, cows leave the farm all the time, and roughly somewhere between 30 and 40% of our dairy herds are culled annually. This isn't a bad thing. This is done for lots of good reasons, not just bad reasons. And where do they go? Well, 8% of the US beef supply is thought to be made up of culled dairy cows. So that is a significant number. And why do they go? Well, it might be individual reasons, like they can't get pregnant or they're not milking well. It could be health issues like lameness and mastitis, transition cow issues. Or it could simply be, hey, I'm gonna get rid of this cow because she's not helping me with my herd goals. So all kinds of reasons. Where do they go? I think most of you probably figure they go here, ground beef. And they do. Lean ground beef is an important component of where these cull cows go. But what about premium beef? Has anyone ever thought of that? And it turns out there are some unique markets out there where chefs and restaurants prefer fed cull dairy cows. And I'm going to use cull and market interchangeably because I haven't quite gotten to using market all the time. But I was at Stephen and I and some others here were at a ADSA Discover conference a year or so ago on dairy cow longevity. And two of the keynote speakers had opposing views on what that meant in terms of the industry. But one of the speakers suggested that timely culling would allow cows to be shipped in better condition rather than in worse condition when they get to market. And he suggested that perhaps part of the challenge with our industry is that we think of these cows as cull cows, and cull has a negative connotation. And they are in fact a market, and maybe we should be thinking of them that way. And perhaps a name change to market cow might benefit everyone. So that's where the term market came from. I'll try to use it more as I go. So way back in 2017, I think this paper was out in 2018, I was invited to be part of a consulting group in Ottawa led by David Fraser at UBC and his graduate student, Yanni Stoikov. And the whole two-day symposium was around what to do about cull cows. And it led to this paper which come up with 8 consensus points on cull dairy cattle. And I just have 3 of them here, but there needs to be information and awareness on travel times and delays from farm to slaughter, promotion of proactive culling and improved education, which this is part of, and euthanasia training is needed. Those are just 3 of the highlights. Following that, or around the same time, Derek Haley and I were leading a piece of work that Alison Moorman did with us on just surveying markets here in Ontario, and we went to 3 livestock markets over 16 weeks. And at that time, we found that 27% of the cull dairy cows had unacceptable hock injury scores based on the pro-action guidelines. 40% had a body condition score of 2 or less, and were getting less money per pound. And quite a high percentage of them had an unacceptable gait. Now, not all of those cows were lame. Some of them were just an abnormal gait because of full or engorged udders. But still, those animals also sold for less money. Following this, Yanni Stoikov did a project at UBC and found similar things. But he followed cows from farm to auction to slaughter, and found that in that process, cows lose weight and they get increased udder swelling. Unfit cows in his study tended to be shipped more in times of higher quota demand. That's probably not surprising. And some cows were resold, about 2% of them. We followed this work up with a survey of the Ontario dairy industry, just around what producers are doing and also what veterinarians' attitudes and practices were as well. And for this survey, we had about a 7% response rate, so it's not phenomenally high, but it's not too bad considering that it's a census. All of the Ontario producers were surveyed. Just a couple highlights from this. I find this interesting because, of course, you guys know that all of you have to have an SOP for cull cows as part of ProAction. And yet, when we asked farmers this, only 62% said, yes, I have one, which tells me that they probably don't use it, right? They think they have it, maybe they're not sure. And that was also asked as a follow-up. Of those that have an SOP, how often do you use it? And only about half of them did. So those things, yes, you're supposed to have them for regulatory purposes, but you're also supposed to have them for reasons beyond that. They could be useful to you, and if they're not useful to you, maybe you need to speak with your advisors around making them more useful. The other telling thing to me was we asked producers, how long do you think it takes from the time an animal leaves your farm to when it gets slaughtered? And this was the range, but the average from this was 2 days. And I can tell you that that is not the average. It takes about 4 to 5 days typically from the time the cow leaves your farm to the time it gets slaughtered, unless it's going direct to the plant to be slaughtered. But if it's going through an auction system, it's taking 4 to 5 days. And that's really important, I think, for the industry to understand. And then this relates to the next project I'm going to talk about is what are you guys doing in terms of special management practices with these cull cows? And about half of the producers said we don't do anything special. Some change their feed before they get slaughtered. About 20% are dried off, and some provide alternative housing. So we wondered with this project that Nicole Verdusco led for her master's project was, could we add value to market cows through management? And should we consider drying cows off and feeding them prior to shipping? And if we did that, would the cows be better off, not only commercial-wise, but would their welfare be better? So we took 43 cull cows from just down the road here at the Ontario Dairy Research Center, and we randomly assigned them block by parity to either be dried off and fed for 60 days or be sent direct to slaughter. And we used the University of Guelph meat lab and animal biosciences for this. And the cows we made a decision to feed these cows the lactating cow TMR, thinking that in practice, maybe producers would want to feed TMR sweeteners. So that was the reason that we chose that. So the cows were placed into the, well, let me just go back because I didn't explain the drying off. Drying off sounds easy, but I know you guys know it's not, okay? So nutritionally, it would make sense from the rumen adaptation perspective to leave the cows on the lactating cow diet and just dry them off. And we actually tried that for 2 cows, and you guys probably already know this, it doesn't work. It's really difficult to dry cows off without nutritionally changing their plane of nutrition at the same time. So we put them in the tie stall for a week, and at the same time put them on the dry cow diet, dried them off with intermittent milking, and then at the end of that week they went into the one of the dry cow pens, which became the cull cow pen at Laura during the study, and they were 1 more week on the dry cow diet, and then we switched them to the lactating cow diet for the remainder of the project. So there is some, management that has to be done in terms of how you make this work. Okay, so the fed cows were placed in this cow pen. They are scored weekly for udder engorgement, locomotion scores, body lesion score, hock lesions, and the directed cows had the same measurements, but just once, which was on the day before slaughter. And then we had live weights on these cows as well on the day before slaughter, and then we got carcass weights when we got to the slaughter facility at the university. After slaughter, all carcasses had the hot carcass weight, as I said. From that, we calculated a dressing percentage. We had a certified grader come in and grade these carcasses for fat. All carcass grades are low grade because they're mature cull cows, but we asked them to grade the fat scores for us. And then at 24 hours, we did a bunch of other sampling, which I'll explain later. So these are the results. So the direct to slaughter cows had a body score of 2.6 at the time of slaughter, and the fed cows were one full score heavier. And lameness scores weren't very different, but we really did nothing to these cows, and they were in like in my ideal world, this would have been done in a packed barn, where maybe we would have seen some differences in lameness, but they were still in a tie stall facility. Udder engorgement was not very common. We had a definition for that, but we did not find any engorged udders, not surprisingly, in the dried off group. And 2 were engorged in the direct to slaughter group, which is about what you see if you went in a scan of an auction facility. Udder involution, which was measured, there's no udder, they're really involuted. About half of them got to that point in the dry off group, and of course none were, because the rest of them were milking that went direct. Hock lesions were the same, but we did see an improvement in 8 where they became less severe. And this is just showing you the range in body condition score change. All cows gained weight. The lowest was half a score, and the highest was a score of 2. And these are just some examples of the same cow after 60 days. You can see the difference in body condition in these cows. And there's another one, and that one you can see the udder and the change in the udder. And then we had 4 cows that ended up with worse hocks and 8 cows that had better hocks. And again, maybe that would have been better on a pack versus a tie stall, or a free stall. Already shared this with you, but the 45% of fed cows had involuted udders and 10% of direct cows had engorged udders. So there is some welfare benefit to doing this in terms of udder engorgement. That's just sort of what happens. It takes time for the udder to involute, and it seems like once they got to about 6 weeks, it was done. And this is the live weight gain. So I gave you the body condition score. So the fed cows gained 110 kilograms in 60 days. That's a lot of weight. And the hot carcass weights were also different, as you can see. What's really interesting is some of the meat quality stuff. I'm not anywhere close to being a meat scientist. I don't even pretend. But we were advised to look at color, pH, intramuscular fat, and shear force, which is a measure of tenderness. And so on the direct side, you can see everything's less here. So dressing percentage was higher in the fed cows. The pH was lower, which is a good thing. You don't want, dark cutters tend to have higher pH, so that's good. Intramuscular fat was substantially higher. Ribeye area was higher, which is probably the fat pushing the muscle out, making a bigger ribeye. And color was different, and that's because of the yellowness of the fat. So the color was different for there's 3 different colors we measured, but that one was yellow, and it was different in the fed cows. And that's just a direct cow on the left and a fed cow on the right. And I don't know about you, but I prefer to eat that steak on the right if it was me. And this was really interesting. So these are the fat grades, okay? And so we actually had 5 fed Holstein cows graded prime, okay? And 12 of them graded AAA. And at the end of the day, they were twice as likely to have a grade of AAA or prime if they were fed compared to if they were sent direct. So you can add value to these cows. And then this is shear force, and this is also really interesting. So the science says that, so basically you take these steaks and you age them for 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, and so on. And then you freeze them, and that stops the aging. And then when you're ready, you take this device that measures how much force it takes to break the muscle. And 4.5 kilograms or less is considered to be the point of tenderness, okay? And so after 14 days of aging, the fed cows were tender from here on in, and the direct cows never got there. So feeding them also makes them more tender steak. So what does this all mean? So fed carcasses are larger and have a greater yield. The fed meat is fattier, and the fed meat is more tender at every stage of aging. Our results indicate that feeding period increases body condition score and live weight. Drying cows often feeding allowed for partial resolution of hog lesions, at least in some cows, and promoted the involution of udders. And there's less risk, basically zero risk of udder engorgement. This protocol could be used to increase fitness for transport and at the same time improve condition of culled dairy cows and hopefully improve their value. So, and in addition to that, it not only does that, it improves carcass quality, grade, and tenderness, which hopefully would link to their value. I do have an elaborate spreadsheet that I've worked with Mike Overton on, and we're still trying to finish some of that off. I can tell you that, not surprisingly, there are times when this is not profitable, depending on what the price of beef is and what the price of food is. In the model, we do account for things like yardage that you might not think about, so you have to have space for them. Losses, I think we had 1 cow die, so we factored in a mortality rate. So all those things are in here. But it is profitable at many points in time, and with current meat prices, it is profitable at the moment, and there's a return of about 2 to 1 on your money. Well, it's not 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, but there is a value for that. But I also recognize there could be costs when you're trying to make this happen on farm that we don't want. We don't want you to overcrowd the close-up cows to make these cows a space to feed them, right? So you have to have space, and it can't be at the expense of other parts of the operation. So I think this is something to consider, and I think it is potentially a win-win in that it improves the welfare and it improves the value of the cow. And there is a benefit in terms of economic return, but it is sensitive to feed cost, market cow price, and you have to have space to do it. And it's also not for every cow, I should say that too. There's some cows that probably just have to go, right? Maybe the decision for some of those cows is, do I euthanize this cow on farm, or do I try to salvage value over right now? And some cows are already in good condition and you don't need to, if a cow is already a body score of 4, you don't need to feed her for 60 days, she's got enough body condition on her already. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I did receive funding for this from the University of Guelph Agri-Food Research Alliance, and also from Dairy Farmers of Ontario. I'm grateful for that funding to be able to do these projects. So thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.